Thank you for joining us today on this Fat Tuesday. You're going to be talking about phishing today with a PH on it rather than an F. My name is Bill Baker. I'm with Firestorm. We're in Atlanta, and the snow is coming down very gently and not accumulating, but it's getting cold, as it should in the wintertime. We're pleased to have you joining us today for this Virginia Association of Independent Schools webinar. This is the second in the series, and today our presenter is Harry Rulin, who is the chairman of Firestorm, and we're pleased to have him with us. We invite you to become our friend. On Facebook, we're Firestorm Solutions. On Twitter, it's Firestorm Soul. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communication, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind our presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and this work product should be discussed with guidance from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, this information should not be considered legal advice or legal opinion. Firestorm is delighted to have the Virginia Association of Independent Schools as the host and underwriter of this webinar series. You could go to firestorm.com, you can watch previous webinars in this series, and you can register for future webinars. We're fortunate to have our good friend Kim Fallon with us. Kim, over to you to tell us about the Virginia Association of Independent Schools.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. This is Kim Fallon. I am the Director of Administrative Programming and Communications for the association, and I just want to welcome you today to this webinar. We are a member association, a volunteer member association of 90 independent pre-K through 12 schools, a very diverse group. We have about 20 boarding schools. We have K through 8 schools as well as schools that run K through 12. So we are located across the state, and we are just happy to continue our relationship with Firestorm and providing us with good information that our schools can use.
Thank you, Kim. This is Ryan Mercer. I am on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm a principal with Firestorm, and again, we forged a relationship with the Virginia Association a couple of months ago. I think, Kim, this is what, our 4th or maybe 5th webinar, but
yes,
you know, it's our to every month give you all just a little glimpse into some evolving risks in the industry, and you know, through what you might be experiencing, and then help you plan accordingly. For those of you who have joined us in previous months, you know, you have heard and become very acquainted with Jim Satterfield, and very excited to have Harry, our CEO, on the line for today, and it just goes to show you the depth of our expertise. So I think you're in for a nice presentation today, and again, I'll be following up with each of you to answer any questions after the call. So expect a phone call from me or an email, and we can get the ball rolling. But Harry, I'll toss it over to you.
Well, Ryan, thanks very much, and Kim, thank you as well, and Bill for the introduction. Absolutely, Firestorm wants to help people understand all the vulnerabilities and exposures that their organization has. And this particular one that we're going to talk about today, which is phishing, which I always found the expression to be interesting, but phishing is actually, with an F, is very near and dear to me. So actually, you'll see some of the photos during this presentation. There's little clips in different places of fish. Those are actually pictures, a lot of them, that I wound up taking that my folks in Atlanta thought they needed to include in the webinar today. So if you have any questions about those, please don't hesitate. I'll give you a little background as we go through those slides. But I really do encourage you, if you have questions during this presentation, there's a little box on the webinar panel that you have there on your screen where you can communicate with Bill. Don't hesitate to put those questions in, because I would love to get them. And Bill, don't hesitate to stop me midstream or, you know, at the end. Just let me know the questions that people have, because we were talking just before the webinar started, and it's really important for schools to understand that the number of access points to their computer systems goes up every day. As kids and parents are allowed to access various portals to look at grades, to look at homework, as you know, with different mobile devices, they're accessing it from all over the globe. The exposure for your school to a cyber breach is very high. Now, you might say to yourself, well, it's no one's really interested in our school. We've only got a couple hundred kids. Why would they want to get into our system? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is they want that personal information. They want the social security numbers, the driver's license numbers, the credit card numbers, all of those different things. But as importantly, and what you've seen from the major cyber breaches that have happened around the country, they want access to anyone that you have access to. So for example, if you're online with any of your vendors, if any of your support systems you're online with. So we saw a situation just recently where a school had a web-enabled building control system, and the hackers were able to go through a web-enabled thermostat to get into the school system, and through that system they were able to get into the systems of the provider. So you may just be a portal for the hackers to get through to some other entity, and you don't want that liability or that responsibility. And similarly, you need to keep all of the data that you have from your people safe. I think you also need to think about, do you need all of that data online? If you're storing all of the data from all of your students from all of the years, not just the current year, not just the information you need regular access to, you might want to think about, does that all need to be in an online environment? That's one of the greatest ways to prevent a cyber breach, is to avoid giving the hackers access to the information because it's not available online. So, or not available within your system that's connected in some way that it can be accessed. So something to think about and talk about with your IT people. There's no question that if there is a phishing attack that results in a cyber breach, the business of your school is going to be impacted. In some situations, they've actually been able to shut down your computer system. So as your school relies more and more on smart boards and things of that nature, it becomes a huge issue on a human level, on an operational level. The reputation issues are huge because, of course, the media has glommed onto this issue and loves to put the latest cyber breach up on the evening news. You really don't want that. By the way, on the financial level, any of your schools that do not have cyber breach insurance, it is extremely important that you talk to your insurance agent about that. It's readily available, it is not expensive, and it's something that you need, not only because of the financial remuneration that they give to indemnify you for any losses, but because they bring incredible expertise to the table when you have a breach. They bring you people who have the skills and the knowledge to navigate through all of the legislative issues, all the regulatory issues, and you really want that capability. So I very much would advise you to look at that. That is money very well spent. By the way, that blue picture down there in the corner, that's a Galapagos shark that I took a picture of this summer. So if anybody wants to talk about the Galapagos, that's offline, but I'm happy to do that. I was lucky enough to be invited on a really cool trip. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, we've already talked about cyber breach and phishing, but also what to look for, the different types of phishing that goes on. what to do if it happens or if you see it, and then some next steps. So, you know, this quote from Michael Redman, who actually is a rocket scientist. He runs the U.S. Army Missile Defense Program. And he said, "I literally work with rocket scientists, and I can't get them to stop clicking on the wrong links. So what chances does your organization have?" You know, these rocket scientists he works with have been told they cannot click on links, and they still do. Similarly, the people in your organization, kids, teachers, whomever, they're going to click on links because the sophistication level of the phishing is going up commensurate with the sophistication level of the consumer. So they're not doing the typical thing that you've seen yesterday. They're coming up with something new. So when they send a kid a phishing attack that says, "Why didn't you hand in your homework today?" they're going to click on that link, and it's obviously going to present potential problems for your organization. So let's look at that. You know, one of the things that has changed dramatically in the United States, as we've seen a lot of our manufacturing and a lot of our jobs have moved offshore to other locations around the globe, one of the things that we've become better at in the United States is more of the high-level things, the engineering, the things that no longer require factories, but actually require technology assets. And so a lot of the value has shifted from physical assets to virtual assets. But of course, that puts us right in the crosshairs of those people who want to steal that information. So your school, while yes, you still have a campus and you still have classrooms and teachers and students, more and more your information and your value is in your reputation, it's in your brand, and those are the things that can be easily taken and destroyed. So think about how we avoid those cyber breaches. Now, a lot of people think about cyber breach as only a hacker coming in and stealing things, but you have so much hardware, network infrastructure, your communications and storage capabilities, even unauthorized security events from intentional or unintentional electronic or human interactions. You know, one of the things we've seen happen is that the hackers will use the access they get into the system to open locks and open doors. So if you have a computerized building control system, you need to think about how you control that access if someone were to get into your system. You know, there are all kinds of cyber-related breaches, and you need to be thinking about all of them. Because again, if you think of the example I mentioned earlier with the web-enabled thermostat. I mean, even if somebody just wanted to mess with your system, if they turn the heat all the way up or they turn the heat all the way down, so now you have frozen pipes, you have other things, all that needs to be looked at very carefully. And as importantly, your people need to be trained as to what to look for. So if you know that you left the heat set on 68 when you left last night, and you come in the morning and that heat is set on 32, that's not just a small mistake. Your people need to understand that's a reportable incident. So again, developing a cyber response plan, training your people in what to look for, and train. In the school environment, your turnover is so significant because a certain percentage, if you're running a high school, so you've got 4 classes, 25% of your kids turn over every year. You need to be continually educating people in what to do, what not to do, and what to look for. So we'll talk more about that. But you got to remember, every crisis, you've heard this is a Firestorm expression, every crisis is a human crisis. And these phishing attacks are attacks on people. And another somewhat humorous, although somewhat serious expression, you know, when we talk about a picnic, the problem is in the chair, not in the computer. You'll get a lot of people complaining, oh, my computer doesn't work, my computer's running slow. And the problem is the person sitting in the chair. They're clicking on links, they're doing things that they shouldn't, and that's causing problems for the computer. So again, the people who are perpetrating these crimes are criminals. They're very sophisticated criminals. They're people who, this is what they do for a living. And what they're doing is they're putting that phishing attack out there as a lure. It's bait. It's the same as the phishing with the F. The people are out there trying to get you and your students, your staff, your teachers to do things that they otherwise wouldn't. And they want the information because they're going to use it to do something bad. Or again, sometimes they're going to use it just to do something mischievous, but it's just something that you don't want to participate in. So, and why do they do it? I mean, you see these, there's been these phishing attacks, some of them that have been out on the internet for a decade, you know, where they send an email to someone that says, hey, you know, I'm your buddy, I'm stuck in, you know, a foreign country, I need you to click on this link and help me get home, or whatever it might be. And you would think after all this time that those kind of things wouldn't work. Well, unfortunately, they always find some new person who hasn't seen it or doesn't know about it. Keep in mind, for them, the same way I said to you, 25% of your class turns over every year, the same thing applies to them. Every year, a new group of people become old enough to have their own device. They're on the internet for the first time. They're fresh meat for them. Similarly, a lot of people who are in the older age group are being forced into the technology era. There's a lot of people who said, oh, I'll never need a computer, I'll never do email, I'll never do texting, I'll never do social media. And now, of course, they all are. And so there's always someone who's uneducated, who's naive to the problem. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your group as well, because as you invite more alumni, more grandparents, more people to join your online digital community, you increase your exposure to every one of those people. That picture, by the way, again in the corner, that's one of mine. So what are the attributes of a cyber breach? You know, one of the things we already talked about, it's a criminal act, but the escalating flow. You come in the morning, the thermostat's on 32. No big deal. You turn it back up. What you don't realize is that that was the breach. That was when they got into the system. Now that they're in there, they don't do anything for a while. They're in there, they're playing around, they're looking for stuff, they're finding out what you've got. They don't necessarily take anything or do anything with it because they're making a plan. They're trying to figure out, what are we going to do? So by the time you realize that they've taken that information, which typically, by the way, the average is 264 days from the time an intrusion occurs till the entity realizes that it occurred. So if you think about how much damage can be done during that period, it is unbelievable the amount of information that can be taken, that can be used before you realize. I mean, you have such a tremendous loss of command and control, and very often you see here how you respond can create a second crisis. You know, we find out that in fact some of our people's information was taken, and we think it was taken today. We don't realize that that situation we had when the thermostat was at 32 degrees 6 months ago was actually when all this started. We make statements about how we've got this under control, how, you know, it just occurred and we were immediately on it, and all of a sudden we find out, no, that's not the case, and in fact they have all of the information of all of our people, and now we've created a media crisis for ourselves because the statements that we've made turn out to be incorrect. Again, I can't emphasize enough how having cyber insurance in this situation is important to all of you, because those people who they will send to you know how to deal with these situations. If you ever do have a cyber intrusion, a breach of any type, don't go out and make any statements. Don't do anything until you can really get your arms around what's happened, because your brand and reputation will be under attack. There is no question. And in today's media world, there is an expectation by all of your constituents that you know and have control over your digital assets. So, you know, in today's world, there are all kinds of phishing situations that occur. There are emails, there are websites, they're even doing phone calls now where they get you to log into a specific website. And those, of course, are all designed to steal money. The criminals also, the whole issue of malicious software, you know, they want to steal personal information. So the banking clients that we have deal with a thing they call man in the browser. So through a phishing attack, they get into the system, the bank system, and they manage to install what they, again, just like it sounds, a man in the browser, where they actually have a monitoring system installed on the bank's computers and then infected into the computers of the people who log on to do online banking, so that they can steal money directly out of the accounts. Well, they can do the same thing to your school system, especially those of you who have school systems that allow payments to be made online, money to be added to students' accounts for those of you that are boarding schools. All of those things need to be looked at very, very carefully. They leverage social engineering in a way. They try to convince you not only to install the malicious software, but that to convince you that the software is not malicious. So it's really, really important that you have a cyber response plan in place. And Ryan can talk to any of you about that want to have that kind of planning done. And again, I can't emphasize enough, training. You've got to be constantly on your people, training them about this issue. Phishing takes advantage of your trust. Again, what they've got to get you to do is click on that link. And they want you to believe it's real. They want you to believe that it's an organization that you can trust. A lot of times it'll come to you from the college that you went to. It'll come to you from some other organization. You know, one of the things that they do when they intrude into your school system, the only thing they may take from you is the list of your alumni. You won't even know that it's gone unless you really have a good cyber response plan in place where you recognize these things. And now they take that information and they send a letter out to every one of your alumni soliciting on behalf of the school. But of course, it's not a real solicitation. And unless someone from your school who is trained and who understands your cyber response strategy sees that email and says, whoa, 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 wait a minute, we didn't send this out, or unless you've already notified all of your alumni, you will never receive a solicitation from us that doesn't include the following, or that asks you to do certain things, then your people won't know that, and they will trust that it is from you because it has your logo and it has your information. And those are really sophisticated people who are doing those things. You've got to be thinking all of that through. Again, today, you've heard us talk about the fact that today we're on the calendar. We can schedule a meeting for next week on Thursday to meet with Ryan to talk about how we put in place a plan, how we notify our people, how we do our training, and we can talk about all that because we're not in a crisis. Once the crisis starts, you are on the clock. We no longer have the time to do that kind of planning, training, education, and it is a real exposure to you and to your school. So once they have the information that they're looking for, and again, don't assume that they're looking to do something bad in your system. They may just be looking to gather information that they can use for some other purpose. So watch out for that. Again, looking at sensitive information, what if they could get into your system and just look at the resumes of new and existing people? There is so much information that they could use to then go phishing in that particular group of people, where they can make them think that, hey, this guy must be legitimate. He knows everything about me. He knows everywhere I worked. He knows everything that I've ever done. You know, all those applications, employment applications. Do you have those online? Do you need to have those online? Yeah, it's convenient for your HR staff to be able to go and look at the stuff. But is it really the kind of stuff that has to be in an online environment? Couldn't the HR department have that in a particular computer that's standalone, and when they need to, they could email a copy of a particular person's application to whomever needs it? I mean, that kind of stuff, a lot of it just doesn't need to be live in an online environment all the time. Yes, I understand the convenience, but weigh the convenience against the possibility of loss. So again, if you're looking at, if your people are getting direct deposit, which in today's world, you know, almost everybody is, or any of the kind of things you see on the screen here, it is extraordinarily important to look at that and say, okay, do I need to have this available to everyone all the time? We actually did some work recently for a collections firm that was only open 9 to 5. So their firewall into their system was getting pinged continuously all night long, because all of the hackers overseas were trying to get through that firewall, because as you can imagine, in the collections firm, they have all kinds of loan data and social security numbers, driver's licenses numbers, all that. And one of the things that we realized when we put together their cyber response plan is no one needs to get into that system other than between 9 and 5. Literally, all they had to do, the greatest defense mechanism they had, was turn off the internet when they left the office. It was literally that simple for them, because during the day, they had very sophisticated cyber response policies, training, all that, and in addition, the people were in there, so they would see any intrusion fairly quickly. So again, think about what you really need to have available all the time. Talk to your IT people. I understand that most of you on the phone today aren't the ones who are going to make those kind of decisions or even have the understanding of what your current IT systems are, firewalls and otherwise, to protect you. The one thing I will say to you is, if your IT people tell you, don't worry about it, we've got this handled, that's when you should really start worrying, because the hackers were able to get into the White House, the CIA, the FBI. There's pretty much no major organization that hasn't been hacked. As a matter of fact, the FBI says that there are 2 kinds of organizations in America: those that have been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked. Because these people who are doing the hacking are so sophisticated and so far ahead of us. What we really need to make sure is that we have response strategies in place, that we know and can see it quickly when our information has been compromised. So again, there's all kinds of sensitive information that these people are looking for, and the obvious things like bank accounts and credit cards and financial data, I mean, those represent a direct risk to your school, to money of yours being taken or money of your constituents being taken. But there's so much more. You know, things you see on here, designs, plans, and diagrams. Giving bad people information about the actual layout of all of your buildings, your systems, those kind of things, you don't want that. You don't need that stuff online. A lot of your maintenance departments have that stuff online now. As a matter of fact, some of them now are even in mobile applications. Be very, very careful with that kind of information. It is not the kind of information that you want freely available to the public. So again, you need to look at what is the information that you need available every day, all day. The government is tuned in, you know, the Department of Justice and others, to the whole idea of phishing. So there are various programs out there. This particular one, actually, you can play a phishing game, and it shows, it's a training tool, and it shows you how to avoid taking the bait. But it also is interesting to watch because the type of things that you see and the level of sophistication, you start to realize, wow, unless I really put in place a training program for my students, for my teachers, the hackers are so much more sophisticated than my people, because my people are trained to be honest. You know, your kids, your teachers, they're honest people. They're not assuming that the information that they're getting or that they're looking at is a scam. And that is what the hackers are hoping for. They're hoping to prey on those feelings of trust. So what do we look for? Well, one of the things you see, especially in the ones that come from Asia and Russia, and there's a lot of them, by the way, that's where they come from, are spelling and poor grammar. They don't necessarily use the English language as well as they should. And you would think that people would catch that pretty quickly, especially, you know, here we're talking to the Virginia Association of Independent Schools. So, I mean, obviously, the level of education of your people is fairly high and would catch a lot of those things. So, again, unless you tell them, though, unless you educate them, their level of trust is going to be, oh, the guy misspelled that word, no big deal. That has to set off a red flag. That has to say to your teachers and your students, hey, wait a minute, I need to look at this a little closer. Why would somebody have sent out an email like this, or why would a commercial website have a misspelling or a grammatical error? Also, links in emails are rare these days. The emails often will tell you to go to a certain site or things of that nature, but if you have a link, and especially if the link is not just to a website, you know, if it says go to www.firestorm.com, that's different than if it says go to www.firestorm.com / and then a whole mess of stuff after it. And a lot of times if you click on an email like that, your computer is smart enough to say, this link includes an embedded executable or something like that. Do you want to continue? The answer is always no. Always, if it makes you have to do another step, the answer is always no. Now, I've received several of these phishing emails where they claim to be coming from Chase Bank, for example, or PayPal, you know, places where my money sits. But when you look at the email address, it's www.paypal, but instead of PayPal, it's POL at the end, .com. Or, you know, if you look at the email closely, very often you start to see that it's not what it claims to be. You know, especially the credit card scams, because Chase Bank is one of the largest credit card providers in the world. And so a lot of their, they have over 40 million credit card holders outstanding. So, and that's not including any of the debit cards and the other things. So as you can imagine, there's regular attacks in that world. And those attacks, you'll see they'll use the word Chase in the URL, but it have something else in there with it. And any of you that have a bank credit card, you've probably received information from your bank that says, we will never call you, we will never email you, and ask for certain types of information. Or we will always use your first name. Or they have a certain protocols so that they can help you determine whether or not it's real or not. And that's, again, they're educating you. That's part of their cyber response plan. That's the kind of thing you need to put in place for your people as well. You probably, especially coming up soon, you're going to see more of the threat scams because we're coming up on tax season. You know, a lot of times these tax scams where people will get either emails or calls saying, this is the IRS, we're going to levy your account, you're going to be arrested. You know, anything where there's a threat, most likely phishing. Also, spoofing popular websites where, you know, they try to make it look like you're getting an email from Amazon or, as I just referred to before, Chase or PayPal or any of those things. Very common. We've all, I know I have, I've regularly won numerous gift cards from Walmart and other things. I regularly get the "we suspect an unauthorized transaction in your account." One of the things you could always do if you get that email, and you can train your people that if they get that email, there's a, you know, if a parent from your school gets an email from the school that says, we believe that there's an unauthorized transaction in your student's account, please click here. You know, we can educate them to the fact that that's not something we would ever send out, but also that don't click on the link, pick up the phone and call the school and ask, is this real? So that's just, again, that's training, that's education, that's part of our cyber response plan, strategy, and training. And it doesn't happen by accident. You can't leave this to chance that this kind of training is going to take place, that you're going to get this kind of control over your system, because, again, every day the hackers become more sophisticated, and every day you get new people and new devices logging into your system. It's interesting, spearfishing, as you know, as continuing the phishing analogy, they've now come up with new terms. Spearfishing is directed at specific individuals or companies. So again, as I said before, they steal your database of your alumni and they go specifically after those people. It's a much more successful strategy, because if I know that John Smith went to your school and graduated in 1981 and he was on the soccer team, and in other words, the more information I have, the more I can target John and look to really access his information. So again, the phishing is becoming more and more sophisticated. Clonefishing, you know, they're actually taking legitimate emails and information and manipulating them or adapting them in a way where they're basically cloning the information and sending it back out, but with just enough of a change that they can now gain control over the information that they're looking to get. And sometimes they'll claim, oh yeah, this is, you know, we've resent this to you because we weren't sure whether you saw it or not. Really dangerous, and in some cases much harder for your people to understand or see. And again, needs to be part of your strategy. It needs to be part of your cyber response plan, so that when your alumni, when your parents get an email twice, they say, hey, wait a minute, we were told about this. I need to be looking out for this kind of thing. Continuing the analogy of phishing, whaling is something that they're trying to get the big fish. They're trying to get the very wealthy alumni. They're trying to get the business executives. They're trying to get access. Keep in mind, they may not be trying to get access into your system. They may be trying to get your alumni because they know that John Smith, who's now the CEO of a certain company, went to your school. They not only want access to John Smith's personal information, they want to get to John Smith because through him, they're going to access the corporate system, because they know that the CEO probably has less controls over what he does than what some of the other employees do within the system. If they can get his information, if they can get through his password, they probably have unlimited access into the system of that company. And if it comes out that your school is the one that caused the Home Depot scandal, the Target problem, you know, that is just, because now your school's name gets used for years in every single news story that comes out about those situations. By the way, going back to my recommendation to all of you that you be purchasing cyber insurance, just the first mailing that Home Depot did was required to do to the people who might have been part of the breach. Just the stamps cost $22.4 million. So obviously you would have far fewer people in your database, but just think about the expense that's associated with trying to recover financially from a cyber breach. It's just not worth it. In addition to all those great people I told you about that they will bring to your service, it's just not worth the financial exposure as well. We talked a little bit already about phishing phone calls, and you know these are really dangerous to schools, because what they will do is they will set up a bank of people, of callers, and very quickly they will start doing an alumni fund drive, and before you even know that it's going on, it'll be over. And they will have accessed hundreds of your people. They will have caused just incredible damage to your brand and reputation, because now the next time you have a legitimate fund drive, these people have a bad taste in their mouth. So really, again, educating all of your people as to what the protocol is, that if you ever receive a call from my school, it will first be preceded by the following language, or, you know, again, putting some protection in place so that your alumni know that you are looking out for them. And I will tell you, it will increase their confidence. It will be a brand instead of detractor. It will help you build on that brand by showing people that you're taking these things into account. So again, you know, how do you deal with phishing? Well, one thing, of course, you're only dealing with trusted software. 70% of breaches occur within 5 days after a patch is announced. So think about that. If you're a Microsoft school where you're running PCs, or if you're an Apple school, or whatever systems you're using, regularly you see that they announce a patch, and that patch is a security patch. The scammers, the people who are out there, the hackers, they're waiting because they know that that patch is not going to be installed by a certain number of people, and in many cases a fairly good percentage, and that's their open door. You have to make sure that your people also understand the need that when they get this notification from IT that they have to install this patch, it's not optional. This is not and you don't care whether it's their personal computer, their personal cell phone, or a school device. Anything that accesses your system has to be 100% compliant. Now, do not email personal or financial information. I think that's, you know, fairly obvious to most people. Provide personal information only through your organization's website. I mean, again, all of these things are part of your cyber response strategy, and you have to make sure that you have a strategy, first of all, and that you put in place all of those tools so that your people are educated. Because again, what it really ultimately comes down to is training, training, training. Now, you have to have a plan to train to. So again, any of you that don't, I encourage you to contact Ryan, let him know, let him talk to you about what all of the different things you need to have in place are. He can help you. We can set up a cyber response audit where we come in and look at the current plans, the current training that you're doing. We can help you design those controls where you can educate your alumni and your parents and everyone else. But you've got to really make it a priority, because every day, again, the scammers are out there. The hackers are out there. They're trying to figure out when your school becomes the next target. So we want to do that awareness training. We want to teach people what those cyber breach indicators are. You know, there's a cyber response roadmap. You guys have all heard us talk about the 5 different stages, the way that we look at almost every crisis. You know, there's pre-action, which is where we are now. Nothing's happened. We can do all the planning and all the preparation. But once we have the onset, all of those notifications need to start taking place. You have to, and then of course we go to impact assessment. Once we get beyond that, we go to recovery and response. And then there's all the post-disaster issues, all the brand and reputation, all the problems that we then learn from, and we take those back down to the bottom, back to pre-action, and we start over again to try and prevent that type of thing from ever happening again. Ryan can walk you through all of this, but there's so much of it that you've got bits and pieces of it already. Some of you have very detailed plans in place already, but you need to be looking at it all the time. This is, you guys know this. This is our mantra: predict, plan, perform. And if we are going to do the work we need to do, today's webinar is part of the predictive work. And Ryan can work with you on really getting down to analyzing all the vulnerabilities and exposures, getting that all in place, because we've got to develop those plans, the training, the education, so that we can be ready to perform when the time comes. So that being said, I don't know, Bill, if there are any questions, but I can't emphasize enough the preparation now, that training. There's nothing in this world, in this cyber world, that's more important than that. So take advantage of it. Take advantage of Ryan. He's got lots of information that he can share with you. I wanted to also just remind everybody that on February 18th, we're doing a virtual active shooter exercise. So get your team in place, get everybody ready so that you can actually sit and go through that exercise. We did it yesterday for corporations. We had almost 800 corporations on the phone doing this a different exercise, because obviously the one for corporations is different than schools. But I encourage all of you to participate in that, because you will learn a tremendous amount. Bill, do we have any questions?
We do not have any questions, Harry. Thank you.
We do not have any questions. So Ryan, I don't know if you or Kim want to make any closing statements.
Well, Harry, thank you so much again for the time. You know, the point that we so often drive home at Firestorm is that just as with, as an example, an active shooter situation is more than just a security issue, for example. It's a business issue. You've got consequences to your brand, financially speaking, that you have to manage, and you respond accordingly. The same in this area. Cyber breach, cyber security is more than just an IT issue. And as I have conversations with you after this webinar, that's the point that we'll talk about. Is we propose that these projects and putting together these things do not live and die in your IT department with your IT folks. They need to be driven from the top, from the business managers, from the heads of school, because consequences are a business issue as opposed to just this IT issue. So again, Harry, thank you again, and I'll follow up with everyone
Ryan,
after the fact.
You are, and I think, but let me emphasize the point that you just made. You can't let this be an IT issue. This must be a top-down board of trustees, head of school issue, because I know we like to all rely on and push it off to the IT department. All the IT department is going to do is put up the firewall and do all of the technological stuff. And as I pointed out earlier, the hackers are 5 steps ahead of your people, probably only 2 steps ahead of the people at the White House and the FBI and all that. But no matter what, they're ahead. This is what they do for you. Run a school for a living. They hack for a living. You don't want to play that game. You need to have a cyber response plan in place that is separate and apart from IT, that is human-based, that teaches people what to do and what to look for. So I very much encourage all of you to reach out for Ryan. And Kim, thank you very much for setting this up for us, and we very much enjoy our relationship with the association, and we look forward to doing a lot more with you.
Thank you, Harry. We really appreciate all your support and the terrific information that we're receiving through these webinars. And I do want to reiterate to everyone that active shooter opportunity on February 18th is really going to be an opportunity that you need to put on your calendar and make available to your team at your school. So we'll be sending out more information about that, but thank you again for all your help, Firestorm. We appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you all, and have a good Fat Tuesday. Have a good Ash Wednesday, and I hope that whatever you give up for Lent, it's not too painful. So thank you all, and Bill, I will see you tomorrow.